Hello Class 4 and welcome to today's guided reading session. And we are going to be continuing with our work on the boy at the back of the class, and today we are on chapter 14, The Three Plans. Now, I know some of you in the past week or so have struggled to find the answers in the text or when you're listening to me talking. Now, what I advise you do is have a read of the questions before we get started. And once you've read through the questions, if you think that as you're listening to the video, if you think we've actually answered one of those questions, you could press pause, jot some notes down, or actually answer the question and then press play and continue with the video. That's just a little tip that might help you. Okay, children, let's make a start. The three plans. In the movies, people who go on a top secret mission always have lots of fun gadgets and maps and ropes, and sometimes even wear a cool hat. When you're 9 and over 3/4, though, you have to go to school every day. Rescue missions are a lot harder, especially when you don't know where the people you want to rescue are, and you have to hide everything you're doing from the person you're going on the mission for. But even though we didn't have any gadgets or ropes or hats, we spent every break time and lunchtime and home time trying to think up new ideas that might help Ahmet find his family quickly. By Thursday morning, Tom and Josie and Michael had each come up with a plan, but I hadn't been able to think of anything. "Don't worry," said Josie. "You can help us see if our ones will work." I tried to smile, but it didn't make me feel any better. On the way home, we went through all the plans. Tom went first. He said we should write to the Prime Minister to tell her to keep the gates open until Ahmet found his family. He had even gotten the address of the Prime Minister's house from his dad and written out the letter. This is what it looks like. "Dear Prime Minister, we heard from some people on the bus that the government was going to lock the gates so that no more refugees could come in. But our friend Ahmet is a refugee boy. You might have heard about him because he's famous for beating up Brendan the bully, and he doesn't know where his mum and dad are and needs to find them. Please, Prime Minister, can you please help the gates open so that we can find them and so that he can be happy again? Thank you." Okay, children, this might actually be a good point in which to press pause and to answer the first question. Do you think the Prime Minister has heard of Ahmet and why? Okay, children, welcome back. Let's carry on page 155. "I thought it was a good idea, and so did Josie, but Michael said it wouldn't work because the Prime Minister was in charge of the government and had probably been the one who told the security guards to lock the gates and sent them her special keys, so he couldn't ask her for any help at all. Then Josie talked about her plan, which was called the Special Appeal. She said we should ring a newspaper and tell them all about it, because her mum and dad were always complaining about how many special appeals there were for charities in their newspapers. And once the appeal went out, Ahmet's mum and dad would see it and get in touch. Josie had written the special appeal out and made it as short as possible so the newspapers could print it quickly. This is what it looked like. Special Appeal. Please everyone, a boy called Ahmet, who is in Nelson's school, ran away from Syria because of bombs and lost his mum and dad too. If you see a man and a woman who looks like this, is their son of your Ahmet's mum and dad, please ring Mrs. Khan on the telephone number at our school, which is below. We need to find Ahmet's family before the gates are locked, which is why this appeal is so special." We all liked the special appeal, but then Tom said that even if we put the appeal in a newspaper, the newspaper would only be sold in England, and Ahmet's mum and dad and anyone who might have seen them would never see it. He knew because when he lived in America, he only saw American newspapers, and that's what it must be like in all the other countries of the world too. Then Michael told us about his plan. We should write to the High Court, to the judge sitting in the highest chair in the land, and ask them to order all the security guards to open the gates. And when they see Ahmet's mum and dad, he whispered, "It's called an appeal too. I've heard my mum talk about them because her law firm are always doing them for people. I'd ask her to keep on it, but she's always complaining about how much work she has to do, and she charges hundreds of pounds an hour. But we can't afford that, cried out Tom. I know, replied Michael, rolling his eyes, which is why I'm saying we should do the appeal ourselves. Is it an appeal, like my newspaper one? Asked Josie. Sort of, except it's for a judge. All we need to do is find out who the highest judge in the land is and write to them, replied Michael. We could even send them your appeal, he said, giving Josie a nudge on the arm. We'd only need to change it a little bit. Mum's always saying that judges have nothing better to do than read appeals all the time. We were all excited about this idea the most, and as no one could think of anything that might be wrong with it, we decided to go to the school library at home time to find out the name of the highest judge in the land. Okay, children, this would be a really good time to press pause and to answer question 2. Why were they excited about the last plan? Okay, children, if you press pause and you've just pressed play, welcome back, and let's continue on page 158. So, when the last bell rang, we told our mate we had to get home quickly so he wouldn't follow us and headed straight there. Our school library isn't as big as the one Mum works in, but it has larger windows and lots more sunlight, which means you can see all the books better. Mrs. Finnicky is our librarian. She always wears bright coloured clothes and bright red lipstick, and you don't ever have to look for her because she's always standing behind the library counter. I like Mrs. Finnicky because she always gets excited when you ask her anything. She tells people off for not looking after their books properly, just like Mum. She has a large sign on the counter that says, "Books are like people. Look past their covers and they'll take you on a great adventure." I like it because it's fun to imagine people as books and guess about what kind of adventure they might take you on. When we got to the library counter, we all looked up at Mrs. Finnicky. She was wearing a sky blue top and a sky blue skirt, and Mrs. Finnicky smiled and looked down at us all and said, "Hello, and how can I help you today?" Tom and Josie and me all looked over at Michael and waited, so we asked, "Miss, do you know where we can find out who the highest judge in the land is? We need to find out for homework." "Really?" said Mrs. Finnicky, frowning. We all nodded. Mrs. Finnicky scratched her chin. "I think we'll have a look online for that," she said, and she started typing into her computer. We nodded and waited excitedly for an answer as Mrs. Finnicky narrowed her eyes and looked at the screen. After a few seconds, she said, "Here we go, right. Was it the name of the Lord Chief Justice you were after, or the High Court Judge for the Family Division?" We all looked up at each other, and then Michael said, "Family Division, please." Mrs. Finnicky wrote the name out on a piece of paper. When she gave it to Michael, we all looked over his shoulder and read, "H.C. Family Division, Dame Leslie Williamson." "Anything else?" asked Mrs. Finnicky. Josie said, "Does it have her address there, miss?" Miss Finnicky frowned again. "Her address?" she asked. "You have to send her a letter as part of your homework?" We all nodded. "So that it gets to her by tomorrow," I added. "It's the High Court of Justice you'll be needing to write to," said Mrs. Finnicky, narrowing her eyes at the computer screen again as she copied it down. "But even if you post it today and it gets to her office tomorrow or on Saturday, remember that the courts are closed over the weekend and it won't be the judge who gets your envelope. She'll have a secretary open her mail for her." She handed the slip of paper with the address to Josie. "Anything else?" She looked at our downcast faces. "I'm sure she'll read your letter eventually," she added gently. "It might just take a while." We left and gathered in the hallway outside. "What are we going to do now?" asked Josie. Her face was all pink, which is what happens when she's really upset. Okay, children, now is a really good time to pause the video and have a careful think about question 3. Why does Josie's face turn pink? Okay, children, welcome back, and we shall carry on with page 160. Even if we send the judge that appeal right away, the gates will be shut before she even gets it. It's already Thursday, and after this weekend, it's over. We'll only have 5 more days. We all looked at Michael, who shrugged and looked at the floor. "We've got to think of another idea," said Tom urgently. We all nodded, but I felt sick inside. I was scared that Amit's family wouldn't be found in time. We all fell silent on the bus ride home that afternoon. Everyone was thinking hard, but I could tell from all our faces that none of us had come up with anything. I felt the worst, because at least everyone else had thought of something. I hadn't come up with a single plan. Okay, children, now is a really good time to press pause and to think about question number 4. Why does the narrator feel the worst? Okay, children, welcome back. We'll continue with our reading, and we've just got the end of page 161 to read. Now I know it was because my brain just wasn't ready to think of anything then. It wouldn't be ready until the weekend, but when it was, it came up with a plan so fantastic that nobody could say no to it, not even a judge sitting in the highest chair in the land. Okay, children, that completes chapter 14. And we're now going to look at how we can answer question number 1, which is, do you think the Prime Minister has heard of Ahmet, and why? That key phrase there, why. Now, children, in the book, you may have noticed that I refer to the Prime Minister as being a she and not a he. We all know that at the moment the Prime Minister is Big Bad Boris. Now, at the time of this book, when it was written, we had a different Prime Minister, and it was a lady. And I think some of you will be able to remember who that lady was, and it was a Theresa May. Now, I know that some children have actually purchased this book, and if you look just inside the front cover, a couple of pages before the contents page, you'll notice that the book was first published in 2018, and I'm not quite sure in 2018 if the Prime Minister was Boris Johnson at that point, or if it was Theresa May. If it was Boris Johnson when the book was published, it could well be the case that Theresa May was still a Prime Minister when the author was writing the book. Anyway, children, enough about Big Bad Boris. Let's get on with answering question number 1. So, do you think the Prime Minister has heard of Ahmet, and why? So, in true Blue Peter fashion, here is an answer that I prepared earlier. So, as what I keep saying to everybody, we need to remember to frame our answer using the question and to write in full sentences. Here's my go-to answer. I think that the Prime Minister has not heard of Ahmet because, although Ahmet is a celebrity at school for beating up Brendan the bully, I don't think anybody out of the school community will have heard of him. So, children, you may have some different thoughts to me. You may think, well, the Prime Minister's not heard of him because Big Bad Boris has been too busy. Well, it wouldn't have been Boris, would it? It'd have been Theresa May. That Theresa May was too busy. But you can write down whatever you think about this, but you need to remember to use the key phrase of because. Oh, Let's try in there, children, to use this tool at the side to highlight some information, but it doesn't appear to be letting me do that. But anyway, so we've highlighted that word there because we can say whatever we want about the book as long as we can justify it. And my justification is based on that everybody at school thinks he's a celebrity, but people outside the school might not have heard of Ahmet. Okay, children, good luck with your questions, and remember to write in full sentences.